Um, Also, I just realized after I finished my fake 5 facts video, there are some things that are factual in that. I fucked it up. What it was is that ribosomal DNA is different, so there is that. But the thing that I was actually thinking of, in its endosymbiotic theory from Lynn Margulis, who is, and I quote, the hottest scientist of all time, and was the beloved wife of Carl Sagan, who is also kind of a hack scientist, depending on how you look at it, um, is is similar to how I described it. So I just wanted to add that as an addendum because I might very unlikely get some shit about that. So excuse me, endosymbiotic theory. I can't speak. Is a really really cool concept. So mitochondrial DNA is different than cellular DNA that can be exhibited in other forms. And essentially what it is the idea or the theory that chloroplasts and mitochondria, because they have different, essentially, there's slight differences in the amino block chain or the amino acid chain that's visible between that and other forms of DNA. And I don't know the full extent, so I'm so sorry, Mr. Whelan, and I guess to an extent my other teachers, but he's honestly a saint and probably my biggest influencer. States that because there was a difference in DNA, it was very much likely that there were prokaryotic organisms which eventually adapted and bonded to eukaryotic organisms or formed eukaryotic organisms, and that because the mitochondrial DNA is different, we do see that root of a very early evolutionary point wherein the single-cell organisms or the prokaryotes developed with eukaryotes or developed into eukaryotic organisms by the bonding or set bonding. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that is essentially what it is. Think of like two amoeboids in a pool. One amoeboid happens to bond with the other while it undergoes a spontaneous evolution. Of course, that's hundreds of thousands to sometimes millions of years in terms of in-depth evolutionary process. And then as a result, I'm going to sit down. You want to sit down with me? Come on, champ. As a result, more advanced forms of life have then adapted as a result. Very interesting theory. I did mention Lynn Margulis is kind of a hack, but she's also the hottest scientist around, so you can't compete. When you're the Megan Fox of evolutionary biology, you have some slack, much like Megan Fox did until MGK. So that's cool. Lynn Margulis later on in life adapted something called Gaia theory, or it was a Gaia hypothesis, essentially, which was a very good website until Lanzer sold out in 2011. And now it's a gacha site with like 4 active users. And the Gaia hypothesis, prior to the sellout and completely unrelated to that very fucking dumb joke, was essentially that organisms work in non-organic systems to regulate and to monitor the Earth. That is, at toe and at very basic principle, a wonderful idea and a wonderful hypothesis. The problem, however, underlies the fact that there is a sentient or otherwise maker design by that philosophy. And that's probably debatable in terms of how you look at it. It is not in any way similar to intelligent design. It's not in any way similar to creationism. So that I don't want to make an skewed statement to. But, however, that statement of there being interplay between systems of organic and non-organic agents, we'll say. So it could be like literally the Earth or trees or the ecosystem as a whole. Functions with just, the Earth around it as one form, working in tow with another organism or any variety of species, I should say. In harmony, it just isn't viable. It doesn't work in a disharmonious state either. I just think that if you look at a natural and a wild or reoccurring life form in a natural setting that has even some advanced recognition of self or community, and it does not have to be sentient or sapient. So you could just look at a pack of dogs roaming the streets. You could look at wolves, you could look at bears, anything. There are, of course, things that it does do which are inevitably good for the ecosystem. So, for example, fecal matter is broken into soil, and through the sort of natural processes of worms eating through and then excreting into more natural fertile soil, or simply the overturning of soil and the mixing through of any kind of natural, irrigation process, or however you would call that. You have returns to the land, sort of the resources through which it came. And that cycle occurs. That's a natural thing. However, it is completely ambivalent towards this Gaia theory, this protection of Earth, or this idea of a maybe not conscious, but like aware concept. Unfortunately, animals just haven't shown in large grasp, with the exception of some mammalian species. And arguably, of course, you could look at sort of things like insects or hexapods. You could look at like bees, which I believe are insect hexapoda. Yes, 6 legs. So you could look at that in like their natural pollination process as something that upends my argument. But recurring, or having the evidence of a recurring trend like that, unfortunately does not stand to the testament of those that don't. So any more advanced and predatory life form especially does not return to the Earth equal resources or adequate resources for said return. There are instances where that leads to things like a natural decay, either a decline in population, or if the resources allow for an abundant boom of evolution. You look at things like when the dinosaurs have died and you have an explosive evolutionary jump, which is super cool to see. And again, I'm probably speaking with some things that I don't have expertise to, so there are going to be gaps, but just to sort of underlie the point so that others can make it more appropriately. I don't think, unfortunately, that there's any natural and occurring instance wherein the system's not 1 for 1, at worst as a trade-off, and if not more, a 2 for 1, 3 for 1, etc. And to provide an analogy to that, it would be, I have to scratch my nose, and I really don't care about videos, I'm sorry. Well, that's not true. I care, but I'm not going to stop from scratching my nose, which I might have to do again in the next 10 seconds. You have, for every 3 to 4 species that wish to destroy or cause natural damage, you may have one that is benevolent, not by choice, of course, because you would look at an insect and not choose to say it's benevolent, but simply acting in favor of, or acting in goodwill to said, quote, Gaia, which is literally just Greco-Roman for, or Latin, I should say, Latinian for Earth. It was the mother goddess in, I think Roman, maybe also Grecian culture. I think Gaia was a Titan, was the mother of the Titans. There might be some falsehood to that statement. But again, you look at that in such a large degree that unfortunately the damages caused by said species doesn't equate to a kind operator. This is the long end of it. Anyway, that's just a sort of rant about Lynn Murgulis. Just really a shame, because she's the hottest scientist. So, when I say lovely, it's not an adequate thing. She's got the rack of the angels. She's the Pele of anal. She's, I shouldn't say that about Lynn Murgulis. She's dead. She lived a long life. She outlived Carl Sagan. She was a wonderful wife, I'm sure. I believe she had children, but I'm not 100% on that. Just a very wonderful lady. But unfortunately, the problem is, and I think a lot of what you can see to be true, especially with older beliefs, science is not irrefutable, which is why it's so great. A lot of people who contributed in some very amazing ways were unfortunately very problematic. And so to remove the human element does not do them a disservice. To remove the human element does them a disservice, but to disregard it does a disservice to the science or the background. It's a weird balancing game. I'm not sure why I talk like this or why I care enough, because I'm not a scientist. I work with insurance, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to capture that thought and have something to talk about. Anyway, it's been great. Or not. Probably not. Definitely not. Because, me. But, thanks for listening if you listened. If you didn't, that's great too.